instead of December. A little inside info here. We did that tease live. We usually tape it 3 or 4 minutes in advance so I don't screw it up. I didn't have a chance to redo it properly, so that's my error. Nice to have Dan Kumiati in the house today. Mike is here too, Joy, as we move it along. Alana here momentarily. You and me now, as we maneuver and get ready for a baseball day here on the great network. We're going to start it with the shortstops. Obviously, Correa, more on him in a sec. The bigger news, of course, is Story and the Red Sox in general. We'll get to Devers too. But Story now is going to be out a long period of time. He, of course, may have moved to shortstop for this year with Bogarts' departure to the Padres. Obviously, last year wasn't that great overall for the Red Sox in his first year in the American League. I didn't realize that his velocity on throws was in the very depths of the American League for shortstops in Colorado. And then, of course, at second base, the velocity on the throws to first base were not great, which told you that he had arm problems. I mean, I don't understand why it took so long to figure this out, where now he's going to miss, it sounds like maybe 2/3 of the regular year, at least into the All-Star break. I don't know. Why was this not done in September? I mean, the Red Sox are out of it the last 6 weeks of the season. Why didn't we get this surgery done in the middle of September? And that way you have October, November, December, and, half of January, and that would save some of his season in 2023. I don't understand that. When did he do this in workouts? I doubt it. Did he do this or have a fifth opinion and said, maybe surgery is better than rehab? I just don't understand why on January 10th or January 11th you decide now to get surgery when it wasn't like you played any significant games late in the year. They're very puzzling. And I don't know what the explanation is from Boston. And this is a big loss. I mean, they lost Bogarts, and now they lose Story. You figure Story in his second year in Fenway be a lot better than it was his first. He's going to hit. He would have given them a little flexibility in the middle of their infield. So, and now you don't have them. So the Red Sox, although I like what they have done in the offseason, I love their bullpen. Jansen and Chris Martin's going to help. The player they got to lead off from Japan, he might be a pretty good little player. That might help them, too. I'm a big believer, despite an off year last year, that Justin Turner's presence is going to help that clubhouse. I think the Red Sox fans going to like him. And Devers getting signed to a big contract after they lost Bogarts. I kind of like what the Red Sox have done. And I know they've lost a lot of people, Evaldi and J.D. Martinez with the aforementioned Bogarts. But I actually think the Red Sox have made a couple of good additions. I specifically like the bullpen. And I like Turner, but now that we are in a situation with Story, he's out half the year, maybe really the whole season. When he has the surgery on January 10th, somebody's got to explain to me, if you're a Red Sox fan, hold on now, let me get this straight. We did not play a meaningful ball game the last 2 months of the season, and we now have the surgery a month before spring training. What happened here? We tried rehab, decided that didn't work. Is that what it was? Puzzling. I have to be fair. Very puzzling. Maybe the Red Sox will give us an explanation here down the road. Bottom line is, though, I think they've actually made the right moves in certain spots. They had to get Devers signed. They would have been run out of Fenway by that faithful there if they did not sign him after losing Bogarts. They could not survive that as a franchise. They had to sign Devers. They did. And sounds like they went down to the Dominican Republic to recruit him, which I'm sure, hit home for him, that they wanted him in the worst way to remain career-wise in Boston. They got him to a good contract. He is not represented, by the way, and I made that mistake by Boris. He is not represented by him, so that is why maybe he was a little more lenient to getting something done prior to his last year going into free agency, and I think that was all well and good. I'd like to have the Story thing explained. Red Sox announced Devers today and Story's injury. Number 2 is Correa. I didn't see the press conference. I'm sure they put a happy spin on it. The Twins, let's look at it from their team's perspective first. They're giddy. They brought Vasquez in to catch. They have obviously Buxton. Maybe he'll play more than the 92 games than he did last year. Their pitching should be a little better. Maeda's back for the year. The division isn't very good. Nothing, that scares you a lot in the American League Central. They get Correa back for what is, I think, a discount. They offered him 10 years, $285 in the winter meetings right around there in San Diego, and they get him for 6 years, $200. So, if you're a Twin executive, they're not going to admit this, but let's be honest. anything. That's 6 years down the road. That means nothing. You know, who knows what's going to happen when he's 34, 35 years of age with the at-bats and everything else. Nobody cares about vested option. The bottom line is he got $200 million guaranteed, and Minnesota was at $285. So if you're Twins, you say, hold up, geez, really? Yeah, I'll take Correa back, $85 million less than I was going to have to pay him 5 weeks ago. That is a great move for Minnesota. So he's great in the clubhouse. All reports, you know, Minnesota's got a chance to be in postseason contention in that division. And obviously, you think maybe he'll be a little healthier than he was last year when he only hit 22 homers, knocked in 64 runs, and missed some games with back spasms. So I love it from a Twins perspective. Makes him a better team, and that's all you care about if you're a Twin fan. As for Correa, again, I'm going to reiterate this. I mean, it just doesn't look good. You left for 280. You left 285 on the table. You went to San Francisco. That's in a tough division for, you know, whatever they signed him for. Was it 320? I lose the exact numbers. What, 315? Whatever it was. Who cares? It was plenty. More than Minnesota. It began with a 3. You left for San Francisco. That didn't work out, but you may have gotten a blessing in disguise. You jump in your agent's arms when, you know, the Mets owner got in the mix in Hawaii and signs you for a huge deal, about $320 million, $330 million to go to the Mets for 12 years, 13 in San Francisco. You go to the Mets, you photograph with shirts on about Mets this and Mets that, Port St. Lucie this, Port St. Lucie that. And then the Mets get a little worried about that physical as well. And, you know, the owner being thorough doesn't want to be on the hook for the last 6 years of the deal. So the Mets only offer you $157.5 for the 6 years guaranteed. And you decide to blow the Mets off to go to Minnesota for $40 million more. I wouldn't have done that. And if your argument is egg on your faces, well, how in the world could you agree to $320 and end up with $157 and then re-sign with the Mets? Well, you know, listen, I could use the same argument for Minnesota. They offered you $285 and you got $200. So there's egg on your face now, just like there would be egg on your face if you regrouped and signed with the Mets. So the idea that somehow he couldn't re-sign with the Mets because the offer was so much less and he would have looked bad, well, he doesn't look good now. I mean, so I don't know where the difference is. And again, with the Mets, and I don't want to make too big a deal about this because they went crazy with it yesterday. The bottom line with the Mets, with ownership and their pitching, you know, on a year-to-year basis, when you are with the Mets and you play for them, you know that you are going to be, you know, unless you just have a bad year, you know that the owner is going to give you a chance every year to be a big-time team. That you know because of his deep pockets, he's got a $350 million payroll for crying out loud, and he's worth $17 billion, and he's grew up a Met fan, and he's 68 years of age. I mean, geez. I mean, you know that every single season you are going to have a chance to win. And you can't say that just the way it is. I mean, you can argue Chris enough, but the bottom line, it's true. You can't say that with the Twins. So as a result, that's why I think he would have been, if it was me, I would have taken the $40 million less to have a chance to win every year, which I think the Mets are going to give you a chance to do. Regardless, he fell in the Twins' lap, and that is great news for the Twins because nobody is ever going to argue his ability in a big game. Nobody. He is a great big game player. Nobody in America could ever argue that. Just watch the games. He's going to get big home runs. He's going to play good defense. The moment's not going to be too big. He's going to face the media with a bad game. You love him. Absolutely love him in a big game. Little worried about the 162. Twins, though, listen, for $85 million less than he would have had to pay him a month ago, good for them. And, of course, the story scenario for the Red Sox, who otherwise had a very good day with Devers' announcement. Somebody has to explain to me why on January 11th are we having this surgery and not on September 11th or on August 11th. Somebody's got to explain. He had issues throwing the ball the last couple years with velocity on throws to first base. All of a sudden now, they think there's a problem. Where were we 5 months ago? Somebody has to explain that to me. I'd like to know. That's where we begin on a busy afternoon. We got a lot to do today, including Alana, who's going to be busy with Kiki, and later Rich Hill as she says hello. Miss Rizzo, how are you today, okay? Go ahead.
I'm good. Good afternoon. Yeah, Kike Hernandez coming up on the program. Of course, Trevor Story's teammate with the big extension as well for Rafael Devers. But here's what I think about the Boston Red Sox and this news about Trevor Story. Perhaps he tried to rehab it and decided that it wasn't going to work, and that's why they decided surgery is necessary now versus earlier on in the process. We don't know that. I would love for somebody with the Boston Red Sox in the front office to come on and explain to us why this is happening. But alongside of those notes, I love the fact that they have Kike Hernandez. Where would the Boston Red Sox be without the services of Kike Hernandez, who literally can play every single position on the field as an elite defender? The only position he has not played in a Major League Baseball game is the catcher position. He has even pitched back when he was with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So they signed him to a $10 million extension back in September of last year for this upcoming season. Played the majority of his games in the outfield last year because, of course, they had Xander Bogaerts at short. They no longer have Xander Bogaerts. And Trevor Story was also there. They no longer have Trevor Story. So they thought perhaps Trevor Story could move to the shortstop position. That's not happening. At least now it's only an inner brace. It's not full-blown Tommy John surgery, so perhaps he'll be able to come back sooner than if he had to have the entire Tommy John surgery that we're accustomed to guys being out 6 to 12 months. So Kike Hernandez is such a valuable piece for the Boston Red Sox. They're lucky that they have him. Also good for them that they have Justin Turner to provide a leadership, leadership position in that clubhouse, because I think they're missing that a little bit. And Kike is going to talk about that, the identity of this club coming up here on High Heat. As far as Correa is concerned, I believe that San Francisco perhaps had buyer's remorse. I also believe that the Mets front office and their ownership group, Steve Cohen and Scott Boras, Carlos Correa's agent, agreed to terms, and then they didn't like what they saw in the physical, so they tried to negotiate things down. They said they couldn't come to terms. They wish him the best. Carlos Correa said, you know what? Minnesota wants me. I'm going to go back to Minnesota. I can understand what you're saying about the fact that he has egg on his face. Minnesota wanted him this entire time. It wasn't at the price tag that Carlos Correa felt that he deserved, and good for him. I never fault a player for taking advantage of free agency. There is not a person on this planet that wouldn't want to make more than they are already making. I know you said he's already made a fortune. You would forego the $40 million to be in a place to win. He tried to go to a place that he could win on a year in and year out basis. Now, keep in mind, he'd have to move to third, so that is a sacrifice. I'm not saying he wouldn't be with the Mets if it all worked out. They perhaps tried to negotiate down. He said, forget it. I'm going back to the Twins. They want me. And they introduced him today. Derek Falvey was doing the introductory press conference. And you can tell the Twins, naturally, are very excited to have Carlos Correa back in the fold. It all worked out. It's an awkward situation. It's over now. We move on.
Well, I think it also says, let's be positive for a second. I think that's a very positive scenario with Correa, that the Twins, who were spurned, are delighted to have him back and gave him $200 million. I don't want to hear about vesting options. It means nothing. It's $200 million guaranteed.
Yeah, but
that's
they also saved $85 million, and they get one of the best postseason players in the league right now. So it's good on both sides. He still has an opportunity to make well over $200 million in the course of this thing. And the Minnesota Twins get him at what they probably think is a bargain.